Hello and welcome to another small screen Star Wars. As always, I am Julian Mush. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hello.
And we're still fighting this delay. We're going to figure this out eventually, but we're going to keep working through it for now. If you are...
Is it just... That was really bad.
I think it's when we go live. I think that's the difference. So we'll workshop that. We'll workshop that, but I think... we'll let Discord catch up. I mean, one of the reasons that this might be happening, and I guess welcome to any new listeners who are confused by what's going on. We record in the TOB recording studio voice channel within the TOB Tower of Babel Discord, which of course you can get access to by helping support the show for $2.50 or $5 a month. And that's over at patreon.com/TowerBabblecast, BABBLE. But it's possible that is where that delay is coming from. We're gonna workshop this, but we're just gonna work through it for now because once again we're dealing with a time crunch. This whole adulting thing seems to catch up to us every once in a while. It is nice though to only have to cover one episode of a show. We just did the two-part finale for The Bad Batch last night, so that will be it's already in your feed if you're listening to this. It's already there. I posted that today, and I actually retweeted our original post of that on Twitter and basically said, listen, if you're not watching The Bad Batch, you're doing yourself a disservice. It's some of the best Star Wars stuff. If you're not hooked after that 90-minute season 1 series premiere, then fair enough. But I challenge people not to be after that. And then, hey, now there's 2 full seasons that you can binge with an absolute killer season 2 finale that rivals some of the best stuff up there with Empire Strikes Back, in my opinion. Right? I mean, that might be a little hyperbolic. It's a little bit of recency bias, but there is some really, really cool stuff there. So I highly recommend you checking that out and checking out our recaps. Of course, we were doing both shows at the same time, but we needed to dedicate 2.5 hours, full 2.5 hours, which almost wasn't enough time, to that season finale. That's how good it was. I guess technically there was a little bit of catching up from the week before, but we won't mention that. So yeah, we're going to be talking about just The Mandalorian today. Mandalorian Chapter 21, Season 3, Episode 5, titled The Pirate. And then going forward, of course, there's only 3 episodes left of this season of The Mandalorian, of an 8-episode season. I know. After a 2-year wait, we're getting only 2 episodes, 3 more episodes, an 8-episode season. A season that I think no one would really argue is a little rocky. It's a little up and down. It's certainly not as tight as previous seasons of The Mandalorian are, but it does feel like coming out of this episode that there is a stronger sense of direction now, and we'll talk about that when we get to the end of this episode, which has I think a pretty compelling call to arms, basically, for the Mandalorians as a whole. It's interesting, but again, we'll get to that in a moment. Before we do, a little bit of housekeeping. As always, you can find everything we do at our website, towerbabble.ca, BABBLE, or smallscreenstarwars.com or .ca. I can't remember which one it is, but we have both those domains. We are working on some new experiences for the live show. Of course, we do record these live. Typically, when these air is Wednesdays, so we record our podcast Thursday nights, which of course we did last night for The Bad Batch. But this is a bonus episode to catch up, so that we're not having to double up again next week, where we have another time crunch on Thursday. So just a little bit of scheduling there. But again, lots to find in terms of content at the website, and I encourage you to join us live and join the conversation when we do go live on Thursday evenings, typically around 7, 8 o'clock, depending on the day, depending on the week, I suppose, Central Time. All right. So we already mentioned the Patreon, Twitter, at Tower Babblecast on Twitter, and same thing for Twitch and YouTube and every other social media that it possibly exists, and including, I think, TikTok, although I haven't used the TikTok account in a long time. Who has the time? Rachel, are you a TikToker?
I watch it. I don't make any.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I'm always impressed by the people who can do clever TikToks. My girlfriend sent me a clever one of a guy dressed up as in the Mandalorian armor, basically playing with his Grogu doll, but doing a little bit about how Grogu didn't
Very
cleaned
cute.
his room, but like shoved everything in the closet, and then inside the closet was an Anzellan, and then they used the "bad baby" sound effect, which is kind of funny.
That's
So
very cute. I mean, what would we
exactly.
put on our Tower Babble or Star Wars, small screen Star Wars TikTok?
That's a great question. I guess we would put little clips from the episodes, get people excited about our
Oh, okay.
conversations potentially. That's what I was doing in the past.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
But we kind of need like someone who has the time to just like spend an
I
extra
mean,
hour a week doing social media.
I'm about to have an entire year off, so.
All right, so it sounds like you're
Not
volunteering.
off, but
We'll talk
on
about this later.
maternity. Maybe.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Maybe.
Right, and hopefully, timing wise, we'll have a nice big long break from the podcast, just at
Yeah.
the right time. We'll see. We shall see.
I'm very worried I won't be able to do
The
the
finale.
last couple episodes of Mad
Yeah.
Men, but we'll see. Yeah, we're yeah. My due date is Wednesday, so
Yeah, but how accurate are they with those things, right? Come
yeah.
on.
I mean, yeah, we'll see.
Anywho,
Yes.
we'll
Apologies to the listeners.
we'll
You have to
update.
listen to Julian be by himself.
I'll pull Jeremy in or somebody to I'll reach out to the community to see what we can do, because I don't. It's hard. Solo shows are exhausting. I find that when I finish a solo show, I'm exhausted. But when I do a show, with another person, it like energizes me, and then I'm like wired for like
I'll take
if I
that as a compliment.
yeah, it is a compliment. But it's more about like how my brain works, where it's like when you're talking to other people, it gives me.
Yeah.
I'm an energy vampire, basically. I think is what it is.
It
Yeah.
sounds to me like you're saying that talking to yourself is exhausting, which makes me laugh. That you're
Yeah, because I
roasting your
have to
own
do that all the time. It's so I'm over it. You know what I mean?
self.
Okay. Well, on that lovely note, let's get into this, because who knows how much time we have left. So, Chapter 21, The Pirate, Season 3, Episode 5. The logline is as follows. The people of Navarro need protection from rampant pirate attacks. Very straightforward. One of the few loglines that accurately describes the events of the show. So I'm actually I'm fine with this one. Directed by Peter Ramsey and written by Jon Favreau, starring, of course, Pedro Pascal, Katie Sackhoff, Carl Weathers, etc. Now, the question is, where do we know Peter Ramsey from? Peter Ramsey is known for, and I think this is no small feat, being the director of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That's an absolutely amazing movie. Also, was a part of the art department for Minority Report. I'm just pulling from the IMDb here, but love that movie. Obviously, I would have been shocked if he was the director of Spider-Verse. And also, I mean, I already know, of course, that Spielberg directed Minority Report, so that was interesting. But also directed The Rise of the Guardians, which I think is like a YA movie, or story or book that was adapted to the story. Or is that weird Christmas movie? Hold on, let's find out. It's from 2012. Oh yeah, it is. When the evil spirit Pitch launches an assault on Earth, the immortal Guardians team up to protect the innocence of children around the world. So it's like the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy. They all like team up. Yeah, I don't think it was a very good movie. I don't think it really took off. But anyway, that's where we know Peter Ramsey from. And again, just on the Spider-Verse name alone, is pretty good credit. Okie dokie then. Where should we start? I guess we'll start with the recap. And what does the recap give us this week? It gives us... Oh, hey, Commander Stinger is here, hoping for some Stinger zingers. Mentions that he saw the Guardians, and will be
that sounds
anxious.
like a real dumb movie.
I want to know. Give us your like one sentence review. It was as good as Substance Abuse. I
like that analogy.
Man, the zingers just really nailing it today.
Yeah.
Is that bad?
That's what I love about it. Is
It's good while you're watching it, but bad for over the long term, or unhealthy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, so the recap here. The recap provides us a little bit of context around what happened with Moff Gideon, right? They mention, gives us the clip of Mando saying, "Oh, don't worry about Moff Gideon. He's being taken by the New Republic for questioning," right? That'll come back into play later, of course. Talks about Bo-Katan saving a foundling. That's going to tie into the armor stuff later on. Din offered a tract of land in exchange for being a lawman in Navarro. That's from episode 1 of this season, of course, and will be a major part of this episode. There is I do like that they included this, which is his comment, Grief's comment about not bowing down to a faraway bureaucracy, not bowing down to the New Republic, when of course he has to beg for their help in this episode. We also are reminded about the pirates wanting to use the school as a bar. That'll also come back around full circle in this episode. And of course, we're reminded of the Pirate King, Gorian Shard, and one of my new favorite lines from Star Wars, which is, "Never trust a pirate." So I think it's a pretty good recap, actually. I think it just gives you just enough information to kind of keep up with the updates as it happens this week. So we start with Navarro, and we start on Navarro, and I love this opening sequence because we get to see what looks to be like an updated version of the Razor Crest, or a Razor Crest style ship landing in Navarro, which feels like a real jerk move by the show to remind us of that awesome ship that we no longer have. Did you catch that?
I didn't actually, but yeah, maybe Din can steal it. I don't know.
Well, no, he's not a bounty hunter anymore. I think that I know people are like,
That's
well,
true.
how is he supposed to live on this ship? I mean, the point is he's not trying to live on his ship anymore, right? He has a home
fair.
now.
He's gonna live with the
etc.
Mandalorians now,
etc.
Yeah,
Exactly. So, we catch up with Grief Karga doing some city planning. He's playing SimCity, which is extremely fun. So I could understand why he was so engaged. And he's kind of talking about where they want to put the business district, and where they want to lay the rail lines. And I think, honestly, if I could, city planning at that scale, where you could just like pick tracts of land and decide which is going to be zoned what and what's going to go where. That's essentially SimCity, or whatever, City Skylines, or whatever modern equivalent. It's very fun. So yeah, it's a fun little moment here. They are interrupted though by screams from the townspeople, and we see this really cool shot of a shadow being cast over the town as the Pirate King himself decides he's going to invade the airspace over the town with his pirate Corsair. And by the way, so a Corsair is an actual real-world type of ship, and I love that they use that. It's, when you think of like an old-timey ship from like the 1800s or 1700s.
Like a pirate ship?
When you think of a pirate ship, a Corsair is that type of ship. Not always. It's like a...
cool.
You know how they have different classes of ships within Star Wars? Like you have frigates and all these other things. Those also apply to real-world ships. So the class of ship as a Corsair, typically used by pirates and privateers. So it's a cool, I think, Easter egg. And I actually really like all the little details that they do to really make these pirates feel like pirates, including, by the way, giving their ship a pirate steering wheel, like at the helm, which I don't think really makes any sense, like to steer at something in 3 dimensions, right? It makes sense if you're only going 2 dimensions, left or right, on a flat surface.
Right, yeah.
But if you have to go up and down, how does, or bank left and right, or pitch up and down, how does a wheel work?
So many other degrees that you would need to go, because I can't remember what they call it, zenith and like, up and exactly, like up and down or diagonal. It's like you have to be able to go 360 degrees in a ship. In space. Actually, that's super funny.
I thought about this a little bit too. A wheel would actually be fine, but it would have to be more like a wheel inside of a sphere, right? Because then the wheel would then represent the axis of the ship, and you could tilt it up and down and turn it left and right, and that would actually work.
Like the wheel is almost on like a joystick.
It would, the wheel would be on a gimbal, right? So it could move freely within a 360. That would have to be how it works. But I mean, obviously, that's not how they portray it here. It doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
either way, it's a fun little
I
idea, including, I don't know if you noticed some of the other details, like his first mate who's like wearing like a classic pirate outfit with like a striped shirt and like
right.
a knife in his belt and stuff. It's like
It's
very cute.
I find it very like yeah, that's true. It's difficult because like the Gorian Shard guy is like so distracting as a character himself because of how ridiculous he looks. That it was
So
like
you're not a
hard for
fan
me
of
to
his. You're
focus
not a
on
fan of his
anybody
look.
around. I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm glad with the way this turns out because I just did not want this to be like a thing throughout the whole series, this whole season. I was like,
Well,
I'm not a big fan of this like villain. I'm like he's fine. Like pirates are cool, but him specifically, I was not a big fan of the design. It was way too like Pirates of the Caribbean looking for me. It was too much. But I love this ship. The ship itself was really cool and getting that scene of it like anytime we get a ship that's like very close into like the atmosphere of a town or a city or
yeah,
a planet, it always looks really cool because you
I
kind of
agree.
forget how big they are and then when you see it in the scale of over top of like just people and buildings and you're like fuck that's a huge ship.
Well, it
It's
also
very
makes
cool.
pirates much scarier as a concept when they can
Yeah, oh
just,
yeah.
like if you're not by the coast, pirates aren't as scary, right?
No.
But if you did live on a coast, they could, park their ship and then bombard you with their cannons and
Right,
invade
right.
your town. So no place is safe from a pirate ship in the Star Wars universe who could just
No.
bombard you from the sky, right?
Yeah, it's
So
terrifying.
yeah. That being said, Pirate King Gorian Shard, a actor I actually quite like. Nonzo Anozi is the voice of the character, who you might recognize as the voice of Abisanya's father in Ted Lasso. So there's
I have
that.
not
But
seen, yeah.
more importantly, and I guess probably more widely known, Zaro Zoan Daxos from Game of Thrones season 2. If I recall, I think he gets locked in his own like treasure vault at the end of that season. So, but I just
Oh yes, he's what is he? Is he
he's
one
the
of
guy who
those
like
like
tries to
high
marry
priest
Danny.
people?
He like
Right.
pitches Danny on the marriage, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
he's got a really cool look. I like his voice a lot. I actually I don't mind his look. It is a little wacky, but I kind of like when Star Wars
Yeah.
uses a little bit of wackiness. It doesn't, and it's like not in a major role. He's just kind of like he's here. He's here for 2 episodes, and now he's dead.
Yeah.
So
It's just the whole sea moss face was like too much for me. And I was like,
fair enough.
like it
It's a
was
little
just
gross.
slightly different. I probably would have been like cool with it. It's just it was a little bit too weird with his
Fair enough.
mossy like seaweed face. I was like, oh man, if you just looked if he was just green and like it would have been fine. I don't know.
I
It was
feel
just
like
too
because
much.
I think it's partially practical effects too, which is part of it. I think it seems like.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
cool.
interesting. We should just
Yeah.
let's take a pause here, as the pirates invade, and just quickly because I forgot to do this. Overall thoughts on this episode before we get into the nitty gritty. What did you think of this
Um,
episode overall?
yeah, I mean it's kind of like an establishing episode for me, right? Like we we know from earlier on that these pirates were going to be like a bit of a threat, but and it's kind of sort of tying up that whole thread
Sure.
in this overall arc of the show. I mean, yeah, we only have 3 episodes left, so
Odd time
I
for a
would
setup
definitely
episode, right?
yeah, but I wouldn't say
Yeah.
that's a setup. To me, this is just kind of like I don't know, it's a little bit more of like a tying up episode and
Mm.
it's like we're establishing like a kind of a better base for the Mandalorians and a better
Uh-huh.
way for them to be involved in the universe as a whole as opposed to them just being like hiding and on this off world just doing whatever fighting each other all day. So I overall it's not an episode that like upset me. I'm not mad about it like and I was
Alright.
just like, yeah, okay, like I'm fine with it. I understand. Like, I feel like some people weren't big fans of this episode, but I'm definitely
Well,
not going to sit here and call it a filler episode or say that it doesn't have merit because I think it does have a place. But yeah,
yeah, I mean, I largely agree with that. On rewatch, I enjoyed this episode probably more than even the first time, and I actually quite enjoyed it the first time. It is like a very fun, action-heavy episode that I think does a great job of feeling jaunty and maybe I'm using pirate lingo here. I'm not sure why I use jaunty as it, but like it's got like a good pace and it kind of feels like it's pulling all these disparate concepts together into, as you said, a new base, a new foundation for the show to kind of it's felt aimless for the last 5 episodes. And now I think it's kind of refocusing. And I think that's good, but standing alone, it's fun to watch Mandalorians fighting pirates. So, I don't really have much.
It was.
It's good. And then there's also, of course, a couple fun cameos, and even the character actor performances here are, I think, quite enjoyable. So even the like quote unquote slow moments are, I think, engaging enough. I think I really did actually like this episode. Shall we find out what IMDb thinks?
Sure.
So this is from Straw Hat Crew 20770 or 20770. 220,770. I don't know. Anyway, they gave it a 7 out of 10, which I think is I think it's a fair score. I would probably give it a 7.5 if I had to score it. Hold the comments on Zeb for a moment, Chris. We'll come back to that. So here's what this is titled "A Step Up, but Something Still Feels Off." A step up, but something still feels off. Sorry, that I kind of put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable there for a second. So this chapter is definitely a step up from the ones in season 3, but something still feels off with the quality and the writing compared to season 1 and 2. I actually do agree with that. I think the writing feels very on the nose. Like there's really very little nuance. It's like, this is what I'm feeling. This is what we should do. There's a lot. It's just, there's no subtlety to it. And I do agree with that. It does feel a little bit weaker. And I'm not sure why that is, because they had so much time to put this season together. So I can understand if it was rushed, but yeah, there is kind of a level of quality seemingly missing, in my opinion. I don't know. Rachel, are you noticing any a writing fall off at all?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's because we haven't we don't feel like we've gotten to the meatiest bits yet and like the most exciting points of the show yet. I don't know.
But we're in season 3 at this point. Like, is this not
know,
far enough along in the journey to get, I don't know.
But that's what I mean. It's like we've kind of tied up a whole part of the journey already. So it's like season 1 and 2 were very like focused on like what the whole point of it
delivering,
right?
Delivering Grogu to the Jedi. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. So since that's kind of like tied up now and we're into like, we're getting into like a new story and like a new, to me it feels like a new book, not necessarily new chapters.
Sure.
Right? So maybe that's why it's just like, because we don't really know.
Careful when you use the word book. The Book of Boba Fett might come to people's mind.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, because we're going by chapters, right? So for me, it feels like one story has already happened and is done,
I think
and now
that's
we're starting a new one. But
I think that's a great point, because this is chapter 21, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, the beginning of season 5 is like chapter 17 or whatever, right? So I guess if you look at it as one big story, I mean, it has a lull in the beginning, but they are being sold to us as seasons. So they have to be treated as such. You can't really use it's one big story as an excuse, because if that was the case, then I think you would be treating this differently, and that's my opinion. So
right.
It does feel odd to kind of start a season kind of so slow, especially because they offloaded story elements from what probably was Mandalorian season 3 into the Book of Boba Fett for, I don't know, to save that show. I don't know why they would have done that, right? It does still feel baffling for them to do that, to put the Grogu being reunited and the Luke stuff in the Book of Boba Fett. It's wild. He's not even Boba Fett is not involved in that at all. And then we get back to the show that stars those characters, and there's just like this whole new status change. And now, of course, we talked about this at the beginning of the season, but the weight of that decision still being felt now, because we're only really catching up to what feels like a moment where things have fallen back in place again since then. So it's a baffling kind of choice, in my opinion. Commander Stinger saying, I need you to close that book, presumably talking about the Book of Boba Fett. But hey, get ready for more chapters because I bet you we get more Book of Boba Fett. I would be shocked if we didn't get a season 2 of Book of Boba Fett. Okay, so let me continue this review. Din's whole storyline the past 1 to 2 years was to go to Mandalore to purify himself after taking off his helmet, but now it's perfectly fine for Bo-Katan to do it right after. The Mandalorians are so far still feel more like Disney-fied Power Rangers who don't know how to use their gear. I don't know. That's a bit tough. I think I wouldn't go that far.
I think that's no.
I think this episode especially, they feel much more in line with the Mandalorians that we've seen in Clone Wars and stuff. Apparently, there's only like 30 to 40 civilians living at Navarro with grief. I also thought that was funny. It's like there's only like 5 houses here in Navarro. It just seemed like things were more prosperous than that, or maybe those people were other people were killed. Yeah. Had this same issue with Mos Espa in the Book of Boba Fett. Hire more extras. I agree, but here's the problem: they don't all fit on the volume. You can't put that many people in the volume because the set's not that big. So that's I think that's the challenge. Make these places feel bigger. I again totally agree. I think the challenge with the volume is that you are literally trapped within a kind of like. I mean, they have expanded the size of it. I know that they did that after season 1, but even then, it's like it's not quite big enough, obviously. And a good example, a counterexample, is Andor, where they built large sets and those feel big and they feel real. And I think there's the volume, though great, has its setbacks, and we've talked about that before. So, Din has officially received the Boba Fett treatment, and it is being sidelined. I'm not sure if it's funny. I'm not sure if it was from the incredible HBO quality from Andor, but this season has felt pretty cheap and low budget at times. Yeah, again, we've talked about some of that as well. Just look at the Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi. I am happy that the pacing is picking up and that we're going to see Gideon soon. Also, love the Rebels cameo. He looks incredible in live action, but it really has me hyped for the upcoming Ahsoka series. Also, really enjoyed the nice little tribute to the late Mr. Jeremy Bulloch, a.k.a. the OG trilogy Boba Fett, when they mentioned Bulloch Canyon. Overall, it is a step up from the past few chapters, but something still feels off. I have been a huge fan of Bryce Dallas Howard's episodes, so I'm very optimistic for next week's chapter. I think we could leave it there. That review basically sums up everything I had to say, so we're good. May the Force be with you. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you agree with that
really
take?
Funny. Yeah, I would say overall, most of that take, yes, I would say is pretty on point. Yeah, there was something in there that I was like, I don't really.
Feeling cheap in comparison to Book of Andor, maybe Bryce Dallas Howard's episodes, stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. The mention of Ahsoka is interesting.
I'm not really sure where that comes from. I guess maybe because we see Zeb and stuff, but
yeah, it has to. I mean, that's the only.
Yeah, but I would agree with most of that. I think for sure is pretty on the nose. So yeah, there we go. And that one wasn't even riddled with like spelling errors or anything. So
yeah, actually, for real, that was
very
one of the
competent review.
Yeah, 18 upvotes. I'll even give it an upvote.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I have to sign in. I'm not going to do that. Yeah, the review is we give the review 10 out of 10. The review itself gave the episode a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get back into this recap. So the pirate corsair is overhead, and so they interrupt their little city planning meeting, and they call for an evacuation. Grief chats with Gorian, the pirate king, Gorian Shard. He sends him a hollow message, and I actually really thought, in terms of writing, I thought this was actually better than some of the others, because he calls him. He's like, "Oh, I thought is this Greek Karga? Because I thought Greek Karga was the head of the guild master of Navarro. You look like I think he said a pampered nobleman ready for his wedding feast or something like that." I just thought that was like a fun, like, piratey thing to say. So
it's a good dig.
Yeah.
I like a little banter like that.
Yeah, and of course we get he says, "Well, hey, why did you kill my men in cold blood?" while they were, letting their guard down on your planet. And he's like, they shot first, which of course is, an obvious, I think, allusion to the Han shot first whole thing, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
And pirates, etc. I guess pirates in general, but specifically Han in this case. He's not a pirate so much as a smuggler. It's a thin line between the two, I guess.
They are different, different things.
Yeah, they have different unions. Yeah.
No,
so
smugglers are like hired to smuggle things, but pirates like specifically attack other ships and steal.
Could a
shit.
pirate also be hired to smuggle things? Does that make that pirate a smuggler?
Probably.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
Like Hondo.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we're gonna get Hondo eventually. Maybe on Ahsoka. That would be cool. I think they need to dial in their Nikto. Was he a Nikto? Right? Is that correct? Or am I thinking of something else? Yeah. I don't know. They have a live action version of, or an animatronic live action version of Hondo in Disney World, so they can do it. Is all I'm saying. So anyway, Grief tries to use the New Republic as a defense, saying you should, be careful. The New Republic is going to be here, and it's a bit of a thin disguise because Gorian Shard sees right through it. Right? He says his charts say that this is an independent system. I like that he references his charts.
Right,
very pirate shippy, right? Oh yeah, sorry. Thank you, Commander String. Hondo is a Weequay.
Oh,
right.
Right. Right. Yeah, he's a Weequay. Yeah.
And then we even get a little bit more world building here because Gorian Shard says that the New Republic can't defend the mid rim from the pirate nation. How could you expect them to defend you? And that's interesting. I mean, it gives us more of an understanding of how kind of ineffectual the New Republic has been starting, I guess almost as soon as the Empire fell. It's a challenging thing, right? The Empire's holding on to trying to hold on to their systems and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, like you feel like when there's any sort of like fall of government anywhere, it's like there's always kind of like that... basically pirates are like the looters of
instability. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Of like something, coming to a crash or like of a riot or whatever. It's like pirates come in and like take advantage of that because there is nobody for them to be scared of. There is nobody to really have to deal with. So yeah, and I mean, like the New Republic's probably trying to deal with some fallout of the Empire, but then also pirates. So it's like they're dealing with probably a lot.
Yeah,
while also trying to demilitarize, which is
yeah. I just felt like they were a little hasty on the demilitarization, and I would have, there's a lot of comments saying like, the sequel trilogies should have spent more time on that concept and kind of leaning into who the New Republic are, and we really like the New Republic has almost no presence in the sequel trilogy. They're largely destroyed in the end of episode 7. So it's like we really get no time with them at all. So this does fill that time in, and that is nice. Gorian Shard ends by saying, this isn't Sabacc. You can't bluff your way out of that. Of course, Sabacc being the card game that Han used to win the Millennium Falcon. So a poker reference. Grief gives a message to an astromech, very Leia, at the beginning of A New Hope, as the pirates start firing on the town. Grief is offered an escape pod, which I don't know how do escape pods work from a planet? They just launch you into space, or how does that work? Anyway,
I don't know. Yeah, I guess maybe escape pod is like a ship too. But
yeah, it's weird. And then orders a retreat to the lava flats that they need to escape. I did think that the visuals of the ship firing on the town and the kind of explosions and the destruction, I thought it was like really well realized. It looked really good, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it did look good. The only thing that bugged me, and I don't know if this was like on purpose or not, was in this conversation between Gorian Shard and Grief, I felt like his hollow was like off, like it didn't match the way his mouth was moving.
Oh, wait, who's
like what he was saying? Gorian.
Yeah, I think that's because he looks like has a puppet face. He looks like a Muppet, right? So it's like he doesn't have a lot of like a tongue or lips to like enunciate. So it just looks like he's just flapping his mouth when he's speaking. I've noticed that as well.
And I wasn't too sure if that was supposed to be a mix of like the hollow just kind of, because the hollow was kind of flickering and stuff too. So I was like, oh, maybe that was like on purpose. But it bugs me. That's one thing with like Star Wars in general that it just really bugs me if the alien or whatever, like usually alien, obviously, if I feel like their mouth movements don't match what they're
Sure,
saying,
that's
well,
fair.
it's like one thing that like
It's
just
very
irks me.
distracting. Yeah,
It is
I agree with
distracting.
that.
I get very easily distracted by it.
Yeah. If something's wrong, you take, and sometimes you don't even notice what it is. It's like it's
Yeah.
just like something feels off. Yeah, I totally feel that. So
But
anyway,
you're right.
that
It's
sets
kind
up
of
the
like he does
episode.
have a Muppet mouth.
Yeah. Commander Stinger, he needs a tongue so I can kiss him. Oh man, that's good
Ew.
stuff. All right, so next we cut to an unknown tropical planet, and we don't know what this planet is. I want to believe because Scarif doesn't get destroyed by the Death Star. I don't. It just gets. They use like a lower setting to destroy the military installation there, right? And our good friend Andor, unfortunately, R.I.P. As well as the rest of them. But it, I get the sense that the rest of the planet was largely unaffected, or probably wasn't doing very well for a while. But it's been many years since that has happened. So I like to believe that this is Scarif. It's the only other tropical planet I can think of. So it's a little bit of I don't know. It's like palm trees and beaches. It's beautiful. If you're gonna put a tropical military installation somewhere where you get to hang out at a bar, I couldn't imagine a better location, to be honest. So
Fair, yeah.
we see a Y-wing landing at a New Republic military installation. Gotta love seeing a Y-wing. We haven't seen a Y. When was the last time we saw a Y-wing? Now that I think about it, in a new project. I guess probably there were some versions of new style Y-wings or updated versions of Y-wings in Rise of Skywalker, but they're like super tiny and you have to like pause and zoom in to see them. So I guess that would be the last time. Man, that movie sucks. I actually I actually gave a dig.
Don't even go there. Don't even.
I gave a dig. In my recap, or in my it's so funny because I've asked this question multiple times, which is, does anyone read the episode description for the podcast? And the answer is always no. No one ever reads that. But I still, because they go on the website, I feel like they need to write something. So I actually probably spend more time writing that in terms of posting the show than I probably do any other thing, because it actually requires me to think instead of just like going through motions. But I did say as a part of the Bad Batch finale that where was it? So let's get to the beginning of the sentence. Yet somehow they took it to another level with the summit, and then somehow found yet another gear for the heart-wrenching Plan 99, for which its episode title alone now carries more emotional weight than probably any scene from the Rise of Skywalker. So, they're maybe unnecessary, but I genuinely hate that movie because I feel like it put the franchise behind probably by 5 years, maybe 10 years. Yeah. Okay, so we saw a Y-wing. Fun to see a Y-wing. Never can complain about that. We see again this military installation. We hear some really cool space rock and roll, like some kind of like maybe like jazzy rock kind of situation going on. I was into that. And we see pilots wearing this, like, I guess looks like the Rebellion pilot costume, but blue instead of orange. So I guess that's the New Republic, and probably why they call Carson Teva Blue Boy later, even though he's wearing orange.
He's wearing orange, yeah.
And I guess the sense that he's wearing orange because he was in the Rebellion, and that was the color the Rebellion was using, right? So people wearing blue, I guess, are newer to the military, or upgraded or improved their uniform. So Captain Carson Teva, who is of course played by a lovely Canadian actor. Let me find his name here. Paul Sung-hyun Lee. And I don't know why people get down on Teva as a character. I think he's completely serviceable. I actually quite enjoy his screen presence. So
yeah, I like him. Yeah.
I think people are just jerks. I think that's what it comes down to. Anyway,
sounds like racism.
it sounds like thinly veiled racism. I don't like him because he looks different. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say that so people need to start being nicer to these lovely actors.
That's right.
So
Because he's so not like the other thing is like he's like a genuine Star Wars nerd. Like that jacket that he wears,
yeah,
that's cosplay. He made that himself and he said that it was good enough for the screen and they agreed and they let him wear it. So,
that's so sweet. I love that.
yeah.
No,
So there you go.
10 out of 10, justice for him. Cause
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like we obviously met him before in other Mando episodes.
Yes.
Gives Mando a break. Like he's a good guy.
He's
I
one
like
of the
the
good
character,
ones. He's
so.
he's a cop
Yeah.
and he gets called a cop in this episode. But
Yeah.
we're not going to lump him in with the thin blue line
No.
crowd. Yeah.
No.
So no. In fact, we're not even going to bring that up ever again.
No.
So we see Carson Teva again. He's delivered a message and he borrows a viewer from the bartender to watch it. I thought that was interesting because I didn't know that you need we've seen viewers before used for displaying messages, but I always find that the Jedi had those little handheld ones, right?
Right. Yeah.
And droids often can do it too. It's inconsistent how often when a message can just be transmitted versus when it has to be hand delivered.
Hollow,
Yeah, exactly. I'm not that inconsistency to me. It's not a big deal, but it is just
I mean,
it's weird.
maybe it's I don't know. It depends how secretive or how secure you want the message to be. Like just
Sure.
shooting it or how far away they are. I don't know.
Yeah, but you can just play it in any player. I don't know how is that really that I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's the message from Grief Karga asking for help. This is the message that he was leaving in the droid, and mentions that he's not asking for help lightly. I love how his vocal. He kind of changes his tone a little bit. He's like, I don't do this lightly, kind of getting serious for a minute and kind of feeling a little slighted that he has to do it at all. But he is concerned that the planet will be lost and become a pirate base, which I think is a fair a fair use of escalation. In this case, it's like, hey, I know we're not a member planet, but if we fall to pirates, it's bad for the Republic. So please help us. Right.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then in comes none other than our main man, Garazeb Aurelius, and I was like, so did you know it was Zeb right away?
I figured, I saw him and I was like, oh shit. And then as soon as he started talking, I was like, oh yeah, that's Zeb. His voice is so distinct.
Yeah, Steve Blum.
I thought, okay, for that quick millisecond before he says anything, I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's just another, shit, I always forget that.
Hold on.
I was like,
yeah.
Lasat. I was like, oh, maybe it's another Lasat. And I was like, that's cool. Just, but then as soon as he started talking, I was like, no, that's Zeb. And I was like, he sounds the same. There's no way it's not him. I was like, so cool to see him live action. And they did such a good job with the way he looks.
Yeah, I agree. He is
yeah.
very, I mean, there's no one else that looks anything like Zeb. And of course, the character of Zeb or the species Lasat is based on original kind of concept drawings for what Chewbacca might look like. So that's always a fun pull thing together. So I also thought he looked really good. I mean, he looks like a CG creature, but as far as CG creatures look, he looked pretty good. So, I have no qualms there. Maybe that's where they've been saving their budget from those previous episodes so that they can make Zeb look really good.
Well, and that's a good thing. It'd be a bummer if he looked stupid or shitty or, you know what I mean? We've had some issues in the past with some of the live action shows and the way they bring in characters being like, oh man, they don't really look like they should. But they did Zeb justice, and he looks great. So
yeah, he looks great. He sounds great. I mean, are you surprised that it was Zeb that we saw first from the Ghost crew instead of literally anyone else in live action?
Hera?
Yeah, we've heard Hera's name mentioned.
Not necessarily. I mean, yeah, it's interesting because we haven't seen Sabine yet, or Ezra, or I'm like, oh man, I just want to see Chopper, because he's my favorite. So,
hey, well, actually, technically,
if I get to see Chopper, I'd be so happy.
Technically, Chopper already has appeared in live action. He was in Rogue One. So,
is he?
Yes, he's in a scene in Rogue One where they're on their rebel base in Rogue One. Yep.
Is he just in the background or something?
No, he actually has it's a very quick scene, but he's not he's kind of in between. He's in the middle ground. if that's a word.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I just like
it's
because him and Zeb like fight all the time, and like I just would just love that interaction in real,
yeah.
real
I
time.
don't worry, that'll come, right? I guess the thing
Yeah.
is they are setting up Ahsoka, right, which is largely being billed as this Rebels sequel, which kind of does feel like
Right. Yeah.
selling Ahsoka a little short that she can't carry a show on her own, but whatever. Um, so we didn't
We'll see
expect
though. Like
Zeb.
I feel like it's yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that like we don't even know kind of what her like Ahsoka's show is about yet. So like I wouldn't say that like her whole story is just gonna be a Rebels spin-off or anything. I feel like there'll be like
Sure.
other things she's doing, but yeah. But yeah.
Okay.
No, anyways, I was just so pumped to see Zeb, but I would love to see the rest of the crew too. So
Yeah, I kind of had that moment. I was like, that, like, I know that is obviously a Lasat, and the chances that there's a Lasat, another Lasat within the rebellion or within the new, the in this, I guess they're not the rebellion anymore.
Very slim.
The New Republic seems slim, so I was like, it's probably Zeb, and then of course in the credits it reveals that it is. So, and voiced by Steve Blum, who did an amazing job. And Steve Blum made an appearance recently as another guest star character in the Bad Batch, I believe, if I recall. So, anywho, great to see our boy Garazeb. If you don't know Garazeb, go watch Rebels. The animation quality can be difficult at times, I find.
It's not that bad.
It's pretty bad, but the stories are good. So I would recommend it just for that. The stories are high quality. The animation is not so much. It's just a fact. Listen, just calls it like I sees it. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Chris Zinger telling us that Zeb looks like his mom. And that,
yeah.
She really enjoyed getting representation through Zeb.
Hey, Zeb, representation is important, even if you are a purple creature. Yeah. No offense to your mom, of course. Okay, so if you go on Zeb's Wikipedia page, it's like a novel. It's so long, but because it basically like recaps like everything he did in every episode of Rebels, which seems a bit much in my opinion. I'm just checking to see kind of where else he's appeared. So obviously Rebels. Looks like there's all sorts of things. I'm not even sure what these things are. Star Wars Rebels Team Tactics, The Siege of Lothal. I don't know what those are. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff. But I mean, he appears in Alphabet Squadron. I guess that's the book, and there's an audiobook for that. So that's interesting. I've heard Alphabet Squadron is actually quite good, and is being set. Apparently, will be in Ahsoka, but I don't think that's been confirmed. But now I think largely basically guaranteed. No offense taken. The last time she got representation was in Monsters Inc. All right, that's some good stuff. All right, so let's continue. So Zeb makes an appearance, and he's basically saying, "Hey, that looks like a tough situation, but if you're looking to get approval for backup, good luck getting that through. We haven't heard anything back from Coruscant in weeks." So, again, another indictment in terms of how the New Republic is handling situations. So, instead, Carson Teva decides he's going to go confront them himself on Coruscant personally to get an answer. Because even a yes or a no, he needs an answer either way. He can't wait around with a maybe, right? So, cut to Coruscant, and we are in a similar office building as the one that we saw Pershing working at a couple episodes back. And we even see none other than Elia Kane snooping around as Carson Teva arrives. And then we're introduced to Colonel Tuttle, played by Tim Meadows. And I love Tim Meadows.
Me too. I know. He's
just
so good. Like
amazing. Yeah. Actually, hold on. We should mention. Sorry, I just wanted to quickly mention in the bar where they were on that planet before with Carson Teva, Dave Filoni, Rick Famuyiwa, and Deborah Chow, former directors or current directors or showrunners on this show, who have appeared as characters as X-wing pilots in Mandalorian before, were at the bar also as their characters: Trapper Wolf, Jib Dodger, and Sash Ketter. So there you go. There's a little, and there's some cool like Imperial helmets and Star Wars helmets
Yeah.
in the bar if you want to kind of pause and look around. And there's some cool Easter eggs there. But yeah, just wanted to mention that before we got too far. Anyway, yeah, Tim Meadows. You were saying about Tim Meadows?
Oh, I just like him. Like as soon as I heard his voice, I was like, oh, because he's done some like in just things that I've watched. Like he's in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He plays like that
Yes.
cannibal that Jake Peralta's in jail with, and like
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
such a
yeah.
funny like I don't know. I just love the characters that he plays, and yeah,
Well,
I'm a big fan of him.
do you think his most prominent role is as the principal in Mean Girls?
Yeah, I would say that's right up there too. It's
He's like,
like
I
he's
didn't
so
leave Brooklyn
great.
for this shit. Oh man,
Yeah.
that is some of the. I just love Tim Meadows. I think his performance. He's just a brilliant character actor. He's very funny. He brings a lot of
Yes.
charm, and
He does,
yeah,
yeah.
it's great to see him here. So he's playing, as I said, Colonel Tuttle, who is another version of a bureaucrat. So we get this funny moment we're introduced to him where there's a droid who's like wants to put more work on his desk. He's like, whoa, 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 don't put that there. And that's it's like that. See, that one moment alone is enough for me to be like, okay, I like this guy, right?
Yeah.
I like that a
Yeah.
lot. And again, this is a great example of kind of like, so we have this scene where we have a soldier coming in saying, these people need help. We need to help them. And then being told, no, they can't help them because of the bureaucracy, blah, 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 blah. Right?
Mhm.
Now, this is part of the reason that the galaxy was kind of splintered at this time, right? The New Republic
Right.
did not force planets to sign onto the charter, the New Republic charter. They were given the option to do so, which meant that there was a lot of independent planets, and some which were still under the control of Imperial splinter cells. So it's in stark contrast to the scene we just saw on Wednesday, and we talked about last night in The Bad Batch, where Moff Tarkin is having this summit, and he's bringing, I guess Governor Tarkin at the time, bringing these kind of these military and I guess just imperial leaders together to figure out how to bring the galaxy together under heel, right? It's a different kind of
Right.
requirement, but the same final goal, which is to get everyone to work together and to make sure that this centralized government works, because centralized government in a galaxy of thousands of planets is extremely difficult, right? And I think
Of
that's
course, yeah.
that's obvious, right? So when you see this happening, which it's like, of course, they're trying to do the right thing, but they're kind of being trapped under the weight of their own bureaucracy. It shows kind of like, well, no wonder the Empire was able to control the whole galaxy, because they didn't have to deal with that. They could just do whatever they wanted, right? And so it is a bit different, but a cool, interesting stark contrast, I think.
Well, it's also just very like it also gives me shades of like the Jedi and when they
yes,
had the
at their
Republic
peak,
before, about how they could never they couldn't help during the Clone Wars. They couldn't help planets that were not aligned
That's right.
with the
Ineffectual.
Republic, right? So yeah, it's very like, oh, we can't get involved because they're not a Republic controlled whatever system,
Right, which was
that kind of stuff. We saw that all the time throughout the Clone Wars. And then it's just similar to our own kind of thing. If you're part of the UN, it's like a United Nations kind of thing, right? If you're part of it, they can help. If you're not, they can't.
Right. It's more like NATO. I feel like it's like, the Ukraine was not a part of NATO. Yeah, it was not a part of NATO.
Sorry, that I meant NATO.
Yeah. Okay. NATO. Yeah, it's like same idea. It's like if you're a NATO.
Very shades of.
Yeah. I mean, these are all analogous to the real world in some way, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, cooperation is good, but I think if you have to be able to see the forest through the trees, right? And sometimes you get caught in these kind of the minutia of these moments, and it doesn't always end in the right way. So,
no, it doesn't.
Let's get into the scene here. Carson Teva introduces himself as being from Adelphi base, so we know at least the name of the planet, or not the planet, but the base. It's unclear if that planet's named Adelphi. So I don't know. Well, I guess we might learn more, and he's a part of Adelphi Squadron. Adelphi, cool word. There is an Adelphi University in New York. I wonder if that's maybe someone. What is the meaning of Adelphi? Adelphi is the Greek word for brothers. Okay. Our name comes from 3 Adam brothers, and this is from the University of Adelphi. That's funny. Okay, so there you go. It means brothers in Greek. Which makes sense for a military squadron. Anyway, so he's there asking for backup from the Adelphi. You basically permission to use the squad to help save Navarro. And I love how Tim Meadows is like, Navarro, never heard of it, right? Again, showing kind of like this, that the Outer Rim's so far from Coruscant that there's so many planets that people have never even heard of, right? Tiva shows Grief's message, and again, there's these subtle little moments like where how Colonel Tuttle turns it off like partway through, and is like, I get the gist of this, right? It does sound pretty bad, but like he didn't even give it like a full shake, a fair shake. And they're interrupted by none other than Kane again, who I swear to God she could be more subtle than this, but maybe it's because we're onto her and we can just see right through her, and these people are kind of like, again, maybe being a little fooled, but she's using the excuse of asking if he wants anything from, like, she says the commissary, so basically from the from the kitchen. Do you want any food? I'm just popping over conveniently, right? And then the colonel recognizes that she has spent time in the Outer Rim and asks her for opinion on Navarro, which is exactly what she wanted. And so she says she spent some time there and reminds him that, hey, they're not a member planet and they didn't sign the charter, which, again, Tim Meadows with his, like, just his delivery is like, oh, that's not good. That just, it certainly adds a whole air of cheeriness to this whole kind of pretty dour scenario here. And basically lays out the fact that member planets get priority over non-member planets. Not to say that they wouldn't help a non-member planet. I think that's clear that they would, right? But they've got this bureaucracy in place. So it's in, and to be fair, I think to the quote unquote to the system, it's like, here's one guy coming in saying that this small backwater planet needs help from pirates, and you want to use our military resources to do so when we're already stretched thin. How do you justify that, right? I think that's a valid response. And but Tiva kind of pushes back, reminds them that this is a planet that reportedly had Imperial activity, which of course we know, and was occupied by Moff Gideon, which he believes didn't make it to trial. He believes didn't make it to trial, and then he kind of is, I think, making a bit of a leap here, and I think he's called out for that, by the way, by saying that the pirate activity may be connected with the Imperial activity. And it's like,
right, yeah.
Really though? Like, is it? So yeah. He's probably saying that because it's in the script and therefore it's probably the case. But I also agree with Lieutenant Colonel Tuttle. Apologies. I agree with Colonel Tuttle. It is a leap. It's like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, definitely a leap.
Yeah.
But I just hate how she like interjects herself in there though, and it's like,
I know.
You little traitor biatch. Like, we all know what you're doing. You're just, it's like, and
well, she's
why?
not
I don't know,
a traitor so much as a saboteur.
No, I know, or like a saboteur. But I just like, because we all know, right? But as soon as she's like opening her mouth, it's like, you're not even involved in this conversation. Get out of here. Like, if I were Tiva, I'd be like, who are you? Like, I'm having a conversation here.
Well, he does.
Like, get out.
He does clock her as being someone from the Imperial amnesty program. So
it's like, why would you even listen to this person? Like, but I get it. It's like, they're supposed to be, oh, I was rescued, or oh, I was
right. She was. I think she said she was liberated, and it's like,
yeah, that's like,
I felt like she was putting on a little thick there, right? She's like, no, I'm used to people calling me that, and it's fine, right? And it's I didn't. You weren't you weren't liberated. You were captured, and she's like,
yeah, exactly.
I saw, or whatever. I just like, it's like, really, like, no one else thinks that's like a little bit much from, like, coming from you. Like, wouldn't you want to be a little bit more understated in that? I don't know. Again, we can obviously see through it because of the additional context that we have as the audience, but it does feel a little bit much, in my opinion. I do like this moment here where, they're basically having this little mini argument, and Colonel Tuttle basically interrupts and saying, this isn't a rebellion anymore. We can't just do whatever we have to do whenever we want. We have to follow rules. I work in requisitions, so what do you require? Right? Just like, let's cut to the chase, right? And then he repeats what he wants. I want permission to use the squad to go help Navarro. And then he's like, well, maybe we can reassign some assets. I wish we could do more. Sorry, right? And it's kind of shitty, but again, it feels fair in quote unquote, at least to the system. And he's not really coming with that compelling of an argument, in my opinion. There is another little mini section here where they talk about this kind of this idea of, well, maybe the leaders of Navarro should understand the value of signing the New Republic Charter, right? And I think the response from Tiva is like, how? By letting them suffer from pirates? Is I think the exact type of person that would be able to see through. Carson Tiva is the exact type of person that would be able to see through her BS, right? Because he's had to deal with Imperials so much. So, I hope that kind of comes together a little bit more, and we get to maybe see that kind of play out. But I like that example because it is Imperial thinking, which is this idea that, well, hey, we'll help them if they join, so let's let them suffer until they do, and then we'll come help, right? Just basically,
which is
threaten them. It's like strong arm, strongman tactics.
Instead of doing the opposite of being like, oh, if we help them, then they'll probably join. Like,
right, which it's like just flip it on. Exactly, just flip it. Yeah.
It's like the shittier way of dealing it and getting to the same conclusion is letting them suffer. It's like, well, yeah.
So that basically wraps that up. And then we're off to. Oh, actually, he does say that he has that, like, there's from the trailer. He's like, something big is happening out there, and if you don't act soon, it'll be too late. Which, again, maybe, but you need more proof. Like, go do the legwork. I know it's saying that you can't, so go at least try to put a better message together than just, I think pirates are also Imperials or something, right? So back to Navarro, we see the townspeople wandering the desert looking for somewhere to lay low. Greef is in his practical clothes. I like that he's changed out of his robes. But as mentioned in that IMDb review, there's not very many of them. It does seem a little sparse for a whole town, but maybe not everyone left. So that's possible.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, maybe some people are hiding, people are injured. Like, there's, that's kind of the gist that I got. I thought the same thing. Like, oh, that's not a lot of people, but maybe they could only round up so many. That kind of thing, right? But yeah.
So Greef Karga makes a speech. He says that they'll stay there for a short while, but help will arrive soon. You kind of get that pretty typical, like, where's the help coming from? How do you know? Yada 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 from the crowd. He says that he sent a message to the New Republic and that help is on its way. Which, of course, we'd already seen that it's not. So kind of gives a new kind of weight to that scene. Then we cut to our favorite unknown planet, which is the one with the Mandalorians on it. And I just wish they would name the planet already. It's frustrating not knowing what it's called. And we see a cool shot of... the planet is a secret, but the name probably isn't. Right? Anyway.
Yeah.
So we get a cool... Dino Land, maybe. What's the? We'll come up with something better than that. Commander Stinger, can you give us a name for the unknown planet, please? That would be helpful. Something funny, ideally. All right, so cool shot of Carson Teva's X-wing flying through the atmosphere and searching for the Mandalorian covert and spotting Bo-Katan's ship before landing. I always love seeing X-wings in atmosphere. I just like the little wingtip like cloud trail things that they leave. I just always think those look really cool. So no one is there to greet him. I love how his droid R7, I think, is gives him the old uh-oh sound that R2 is really known for. He introduces himself to whoever may be listening, kind of has his hands up in the air to kind of say, I'm not a threat. And then we kind of pan back and we see that there's Mandalorians who got have a gun, a blaster trailed on them. Paz Vizsla comes out first, basically saying, take off, Blue Boy, calling him a cop. We don't trust cops around here, and the New Republic's not welcome here. But then Din, he pops in to say, hey, how did you even find us? By the way, I trust this guy, but how did he find us? And then he said, well, hey, I've served within the rebellion. is with you guys. And then that's when R5 rolls out, goes a little beep, beep, beep.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny.
I
He's a
loved how
little
also
snitch.
I love how everyone is like looking around, like who the fuck told him, like looking at
Yeah.
each. I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
Uh,
I love it.
but no, it's just R5, and it's like he gets a little moment to shine. I get so what's really cool about that is it like finally, we had that line about how he was serving the rebellion, and we got that on Tatooine, but now it's like solidified. Now here's a rebel pilot saying that he worked with R5. Who knows? Maybe R5 was his
Yeah.
astromech at the time. Anyway, R5 gave him the location, and Mando says, "Hey, listen, he cut me a break once. Let me talk to him, and I'll sort this thing out." And so they have a private conversation, and he's basically saying, "Hey, Grief is in trouble. They need your help. He's your friend. You should do something." And Din asks the right questions. He says, "Why can't the New Republic help?" And he's like, "Well, they're too distracted over in Coruscant. We don't have the resources, et cetera, et cetera." And then the next logical question is, okay, but why come to me? What's in it for you, right? And he just wants he wants to help, which is fair, but also he wants to get Coruscant to wake up. So if he's able to use the Mandalorians to help do that, that helps him. And he thinks that, hey, these pirates might be connected to the Empire, and he wants to know more. So he can't do that while there's pirates there. So we're going to figure that out. So it does help him, but it's mostly just there to kind of say, hey, I don't have any other resources. You do. Maybe you can do something about it. And so ultimately, Carson Teva just boils it down to the fact that, hey, he's your friend and you should help, right?
Yeah.
So Teva gets back in his X-Wing. He apologizes for intruding and saying, listen, I know you'll move anyway, but trust me, I'll keep your secret, right? Which I think is kind of like a nice little moment, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't understand why people don't like this character. It baffles me.
I know.
So Bo-Katan then
terrible people.
Listen, if you don't like him for whatever reason, that's all. That's you don't have to justify yourself. I'm just saying, give him a chance. So
yeah.
Bo pops over after Carson leaves and asks, kind of, hey, so what are you thinking? What's the read, right? And Din's like, well, we have to help. He's my friend. I have to. But it's probably easier if we work together on this. So cut to interior of their Mandalorian cave. There's a roaring bonfire, though not quite as big as the. I don't know if you notice how big the bonfire was in the concept drawings in the credits, but it's like huge, massive bonfire in the credits. I kind of wish we'd saw that version of it, but probably hard to do that in a interior inside the inside the whatever it's called. Anywho, so they're inside the cave. There's a roaring bonfire, and Din speaks to the covert while holding the Beskar hammer as a talking stick. So here we go. We got an answer from Chris Stinger. I want to say the planet is Gregonia. All right. I was hoping for something funnier than that, to be honest. But hey, not every zinger is gonna work. But I do like that. It actually sounds like an actual name of a planet. So fair enough. So, and I'm sure there's a reference that I'm missing here. So please fill me in. That's
it's
the
Grogu.
case. So,
come on.
oh, Grogonia. Oh, is
Like
that what you're going for?
Come on.
Okay.
I would assume.
Probably. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I
choked.
Fine.
Yeah. I mean,
too much pressure.
Yeah, we get it. Exactly. That's right. Just it's easier if you can be in this like off on the side, just throwing in the zingers, and we can just pick the best ones as they're coming in. That's less pressure that way. Fair enough. So, we're in this cave. He's holding the Beskar talking stick. What did you like the idea of having the hammer be a talking stick as a concept?
I love it. It's
no notes.
Yeah, it's very, very kindergarten, and I fucking love it.
Hey, I feel like they have this strict code, but they do kind of behave as a little unorganized at times, right? So it's nice to see that they follow kind of like very traditional rules of engaging in democracy, basically.
It's very respectful, yeah.
Yeah, so he's holding the talking stick and mentions that they, hey, we might have actually fought against these guys before, but don't worry about that. Um, that was all the way back in season 1 when you helped me escape with Grogu. So, that's water under the bridge. He's changed since then. And since then, he's actually risked his own life to help me and Grogu, just like you guys did. And says, listen, I understand it's a lot to ask, but here I am standing in front of you, just a guy asking for some help, right? And that they need to ask soon, because otherwise it might be too late. And then there's lots of that kind of like mumbling and grumbling. Oh, I don't know. Sounds like a lot to ask. And then he mentions that, hey, you know what? It was the Imperials who destroyed our covert before, not Gideon and his people, right? So just keep that in mind. And he's offered he offered me specifically a tract of land. Maybe here's an idea. I thought this was so fun. I love this scene because it's surprising and clever, right? So when he was originally kind of offered that tract of land, I did not connect the dots to, oh, well, maybe they'll use that as the new Mandalorian homeworld, right? That's a cool idea. So he's like, hey, we got this land offered to me. Maybe we accept the offer and we have a place that we're welcome, right? Wouldn't that be a fun idea? We don't have to fight giant turtle monsters and pterodactyls, right? That'd be a nice change.
Well, yeah, especially because they've lived there at one point too. So
Yeah, and you're familiar with it, right? You probably have friends in the neighborhood,
yeah.
Yeah, the grocer, So,
Yeah.
that actually is quite compelling. I think that is a part of the reason that this kind of works. And then so he's like, okay,
Yes.
it's up to you guys to decide now. And he passes the stick back, the hammer back to the armorer, who asks if there's anyone else who wants to speak. And then I think surprising, this is where I was surprised twice actually, because Paz steps up to talk. He says, he does the classic bait and switch, right? He talks about how he helped Din and Grogu. He was there that night when he saw people, his friends gunned down in an effort to save the lives of Din and Grogu, right? How many people died for them to help? Why should we help again? Why lay our lives down again, right? And then people are like, yeah, why should we? Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. You're right. And then he's like, because we're Mandalorians. I was like, whoa. I did not see that coming. And he admits to disagreements, but he says he saved my son's life, and even Bo-Katan helped when we gave up hope. So and I think the best part of his, I guess, the most kind of well-formulated argument he has here, which is that he is offering the Mandalorians an opportunity to fight for a better future, which what do they love to do more than fight, right? So here's a solution to our problems. We get to do our favorite thing, fight stuff, and then we get to have a better place to live, right? And I think that's a really kind of really compelling argument. So what do you make of this kind of surprise and twist here?
Yeah, I kind of love this whole setup. Like it was great. Like this whole I don't know, almost like a tribal council where you hang out and have the talking stick and talk about, like you said, in a democratic way, but everyone gets a voice and can put their 2 cents in and everything. So, but yeah, having Paz like stand up for him is really great to see. And yeah, it's just like, why wouldn't they? It's like, okay, we can get land out of it and we have to go fight some guys, and we love fighting because we're Mandalorian. So
Yep.
it just makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it's a really good way to kind of get them off this secluded dinosaur planet that they're just kind of like fighting each other on all the time.
I believe it's called Gregoria.
Yeah, exactly. And put them onto a established world that they can do some stuff with. So it was a really good segue I found to like kind of get these Mandalorians out from hiding and kind of introduce them back into the galaxy as a whole a little bit.
Yeah, I also really like the idea of having like a new home base for the Mandalorians, because it reminds me of like having a home base in a video game where you can kind of like improve it over time, and like again back to that SimCity kind of analogy where you get to like design your own little space, and they get a big tract of land here. They get like a massive like acreage basically, right? So that's pretty cool in my opinion. I like to have a nice cozy home base to go back to. Anyway, so we hard cut, and this I actually thought these hard cuts were really cool. Hard cut to Bo giving a speech to a platoon of Mandalorians. Although I did think that the writing here was a bit clunky, right? Talking about her ship, it's a Comeric class fighter transport. You'll be dropped in, but you must work as I think she calls it a strict military unit. And I'm like, ugh, I don't love that. Don't love that dialogue, but all right.
Yeah.
And that Din and her will, patrol the skies and help take out the ship for the kind of sky component from
Right.
there. It's a good plan. So we then cut to the interior of the ship of her Comeric class fighter transport, and she continues the briefing. She says, the Captain Shard is captaining a Cumulus class Corsair. Cumulus class is funny because a cumulus cloud is kind of like a extremely harmless cloud.
Oh, okay.
So it's like it's a type of cloud, and it's like the white fluffy ones that you see on like a nice sunny day.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, they can turn into thunderstorms. I guess technically a cumulonimbus is a type of storm cloud that is in the same family. But anyway, I'm not to get into meteorology today. But that is where that's coming from. And it is carrying a complement of snub fighters, and I guess snub fighters are kind of, think of them as TIE fighters are kind of a form of snub fighters. They have a home base of operation, and they can't really go too far away from their home base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's cool other little ships that we've seen already.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they mentioned how the Corsair has aerial bombardment capabilities. Of course, we already saw those destroying the town, and that the plan is for Mando to distract the Corsair, and then they'll be dropped into the town. And that they are an independent planet. This is like really driven home here, independent, and that's why it's good to settle, right? So they don't have to kowtow to any imperial and or New Republic rules. They can kind of establish follow their own set of rules here, and that they can be heroes, which is actually that is kind of nice. It's nice to be heroes every once in a while.
Yeah.
And then we get this really cool musical cue as they pop in out of hyperspace. It's like boom, and it's like, oh, here we go, shit's about to go down, and then we get into the kind of the whole action sequence, which takes up much of the remainder of the episode. We see some shots of pirates menacing the town that is kind of laid in rubble. They're messing with a waiter. They're drinking in that school that they wanted to drink in before. They're shooting at those monkey lizards up in the tree. Just real pirate stuff,
Yeah,
and
just being drunken assholes.
Yes, exactly. And so Mando, I love, by the way, they've really gotten good at this, but using his Mando, like the Mandalorian musical cue, that sound, as he, like, when he appears. And so his ship appears overhead, and inside the Corsair, we see the captain's first mate, I guess, or something. I'm gonna go with first mate because I don't know what else we would call them.
Yeah,
Captain's first mate, an Ugnaught dressed in a striped sweater with a cloth belt with a knife stuck in it. He just looks like right out of like Treasure Island or something. It's very funny.
Yeah.
And I just think the use of the Ugnaught is like the perfect alien for that. I don't know why, but it just totally works. Yeah. So Mando gives them like this flyby, almost warning shot. It's not really a warning shot, but it doesn't really do any major damage. So, and then the pirates kind of jump into action. I love a good pirate saying, "Man the gunnels." So the gunnels, which is basically written down, looks like gun walls, are the part of the canoe that run along the top edge of the hull. So that's a gunnel. But on a large ship is the part where the gun, like the cannons go. So
like come out of. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where they go. They go down to these like pods that are very reminiscent of some of the things we've seen in kind of the prequel movies, and that they're actually manned, actual people within these pods that are launching, rockets against the town and stuff. I just think it's a really cool look. I thought the ship is really well realized. I love the design of the Corsair ship, by the way.
Yeah,
the stripes on it is cool.
Me
I love
too.
any ship that has, yeah, totally. That has like that snub nose, not in the sense of like snub fighters, but like that kind of like that front that's tilted down. Yeah. Just kind of like the Arc 170.
Hammerhead shark or something. Or
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it's a really cool look.
It's cool looking.
So we're in the middle of an action sequence here. So they start shooting at Mando as he flies by, and they launch the stump fighters, and then they send the whole Corsair after him. So everyone, all hands on deck. Here we go. We're gonna go after Mando. It's the Mandalorian. That's what he basically sounds like. And then we got reintroduced to our main man Vane, right? Who's that pirate Nikto, and
Yes.
he said, "It's bold of you to return, Mando." And it's interesting that of all the characters of the pirates, he's the one that's going to stick around. I kind of like that. I find Vane to be kind of like a good pirate character. So they kind of square off, and then Greef spots Mando's ship in the air, gives him a call on his car phone, and thanks him for helping out, but warns him that he's outnumbered. We get a classic line about, "I like those odds." That's a classic line, action movie line.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Listen, just to be clear, I am doing this because I'm taking you up on your offer for that land." So, which I think is a really funny
Yeah.
negotiating tactic to be like, "Oh, you need my help, so I'm gonna." It is a little strongman as like himself, to be honest. Like, you're not gonna like be a little bit nicer
I
about this whole thing, but all right, fair enough.
think he just knows Grief good enough to be like, hey, just so you know, like
We're
I'm
taking
getting
that land.
after this.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think Grief respects that type of like attitude, right? Confidence, right? All right, so as Mando distracts the Corsair, Bo-Katan arrives to drop her soldiers off, and I love how they like drop out of that with their jetpacks and stuff. It just looks very cool, like to have like these paratroopers literally drop out of a ship into
Yeah.
the town. It's just a badass visual that I thought is executed well. I think the more we see the Mandalorians using the jetpacks, the cooler they look. Like the better they've got at making them look good. As they land, we see the Enzellans again. They're like still hiding out in their little house. And then we get this little line like, "Everybody come look." It's so funny. I
Yeah.
laughed I laughed
I
both
love
times
them.
I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're adorable.
Yeah, it's great. So that's when the Mandalorians start kicking ass. We get this kind of first glimpse of them working as a military unit and just cutting through the town like a hot knife through butter, right? At one point, one person knocks, I think one of the female ones like knocks one over and then shoots one blank right on the ground. It's pretty cool. A little cold-blooded, but very cool. Meanwhile, the Mandalorian Din is being chased into that canyon that we are familiar with from
Yeah.
season 2 by those stump fighters. Bo uses that time to attack the Corsair with her ship, catching them by surprise. So she takes out one of their engines. Gorian Shard wants his fighters back to protect the ship, so now he's kind of all over the place. So Vane, though he was in pursuit, is called off to regroup with the Corsair. Back on the streets, the Mandalorians are approaching the courtyard, but are kind of warned. I thought this was so fun, too. Warned of a possible ambush by the monkey lizards, right?
I love it. I love that they just point and call them out because those pirates were shooting at them earlier. So they're like,
Yes.
"Fuck these guys! They're over there." Like,
yeah. Like
I love
I
that
guess
little detail.
how intelligent are these animals?
They're pretty intelligent. Like,
can
'cause
Salacious
we
come
have, like,
speak?
Salacious Crumb. I think they have a little bit of a language, kind of. I don't know, like probably as much as like some of those, like a gonk droid or like a,
Okay.
I think they're intelligent enough, like a parrot. I would.
Well, that's pretty wild.
Like
Well,
a monkey.
I don't know. A parrot and a monkey wouldn't be able to warn you of a possible ambush. I don't think so. And
Yeah, you never know. But yeah, I think they're intelligent enough for sure.
if they're intelligent enough to speak, it's pretty wild that they were eating them. I'm just gonna put that out there. Anyway,
I don't. Yeah.
So this is when the Mandalorians get kind of pinned down. They get boxed in by pirates on both sides, and they're kind of encircled. So that's when Paz Vizsla arrives with the second unit and finally gets to use his Gatling gun. We don't get to see it very often, used very often. Yeah, absolutely mows them down. And then that's when the pirates retaliate by using a mounted blaster from Greef's office balcony, and that also pins them down again. In fact, Paz gets a shot right in the chest from this thing. But thankfully, I guess because of his Mandalorian armor, he's safe and he's okay. Is he safe? Is he all right? Anyway, back in the air, the snuff fighters engage the gauntlet. By the way, did you find it odd that that pirate knew the name of Bo-Katan's ship? Because that's the name of the ship. It's not the type of ship that it is. Or do you
Oh,
think they
I
just
don't
made a
know.
mistake? It's I don't know. I thought that was odd.
Yeah, I don't know.
So Mando is there to help though, and we get this kind of really cool moment where he's above you, no, he's below you, and he's like taking out all these snuff fighters, and you really see how powerful that N1 can be.
Yeah.
This is some of the best aerial combat we've seen in a long time. It's very, very exciting, very well realized too. Just looks really cool. The CG in this episode is great across the board, in my opinion.
Yes, really good. Really good.
The Corsair loses another engine and starts losing its shields. This is when things start going really bad for them. Back in the town, the armorer sneaks up on the pirates in the office and takes them out with her hammer and that other tool. And then this allows the rest of the Mandalorians.
Yeah, I love that she just fights with her hammers. It's sick.
Yeah, it is badass, right? It's
Yeah.
very, and like she kind of like comes in there like stealthy style, although she's like, those guys are screaming as they're killed, and that guy on the gun does not notice. It's that's kind of funny. So she takes out the pirates in the balcony, and this lets the Mandalorians continue their assault, pushing the pirates out of the town, who are then confronted by the townsfolk, forcing them to surrender. So huzzah, victory, at least on the ground. In the air, Vane abandons Shard, who makes a last-ditch effort to continue his assault by taking the helm himself and attacking the town once again. He says he'll retreat in a puffer pig's eye, which I think is I don't know what that means, but it sounds piratey. And yeah, this doesn't really work though. And Mando and Bo take out the last engine, and they cause the ship to crash into the planet, just outside of town. I thought the look of the ship crashing into the planet was like, again, really well done. Just looked really cool.
Yeah, super well done. Yeah.
And
I was just like glad. I was like, okay, sweet, that guy's dead. Like we don't have to see him again, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That you're like, oh, thank God I don't have to look at his stupid face anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I guess like now they got all this wreckage that they can scavenge and stuff, so that's cool for them. Good for the local economy. Excuse me. And that's when everyone cheers, and that they're, hey, heroes indeed. Guess what? The Mandalorians showed up, kicked everyone's butt, saved the town. Congratulations. Well done. Did you have any other thoughts on this action sequence? Anything stand out to you?
No, not really. Not that we kind of haven't gone over. I just like in general, it was really good action. It was really well done. I like seeing how strong like Mando's ship is, and dropping all the Mandalorians in was just very, I don't know. It was good. It gave me vibes of like old Clone Wars, like Jedi missions and
Yes,
stuff like
totally.
that, where it's just like very well executed. So
It's
I just liked it a lot. I was like, it was good action.
Yeah, it's great action. It was really exciting. Like the music was exciting, and the action was compelling, and the use of a drop ship, and there's aerial combat and ground combat. It's just like it's like a fun war movie aesthetic kind of feel to it, and I just thought it was a really good time. So enjoyed it quite a lot. And that's when Greef makes a speech. This is a second speech of the episode. He thanks the Mandalorians and calls them liberators, and that the planet will forever be indebted to them. So I guess they'll need to build another statue. Because I think he said something similar about IG-11. So he does admit that they were on opposite sides in the past, but they can put that all behind them. Monkey lizards are as sentient as the homeless. Yikes, Commander Stinger. That's a little dark, I think. It's a little dark. Admits to being on opposite sides, but is putting that behind them. As the High Magistrate, he's allowed to cede all land from the western lava flats to Bullet Canyon. Again, that Bullet Canyon being a reference to the actor who played Boba Fett in the original trilogy, who recently passed away. So that's a nice little nod to him. And is giving that land to the Mandalorians. Again, it seems like quite a lot of land. So like I said, probably an acreage or more. You may not have a home planet, but you do now have a home. I think that's a well written line. So there you go. I give a little bit of praise to the writing. I think that's a nice sentiment to be shared by Greef. And I do like, of course, the little look, the glance over at Mando, who gives him the little nod, like, that's the stuff, right? Like, and then they exchange little nods. It's also like action movie kind of
Yeah.
classic stuff. So Paz approaches Bo at this moment, telling her, "Hey, the armorer wishes to speak to you." Were you surprised when that happened? This is like the third surprise of this episode for me. I was like, really? Why?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit. I was, yeah, definitely a little bit. I was just like, oh, okay, wonder what's up. Like, yeah, it was it's just intriguing. I mean, obviously we get to it
Yes.
right away about what it's all about, but yeah, it's quite cool what they do with her here. So
Hmm.
yeah, I liked it.
So what's even cooler about it is that they have this conversation in the old covert in it, where their old forge
Yeah,
was. So we actually get to hear the old musical cue that we heard from season 1 when they first arrived there. So that's a nice little callback. And so they have this little meeting, and the armorer talks about the old forge that they used to use, and how she remembers the Great Forge of Mandalore. And Bo says, "I remember the Great Forge. It was large and ornate, and the air rang with the music of 100 hammers." She always gets I think here's the thing: the armorer gets the best dialogue. It's like really cool what she gets to say. And
yeah,
Emily Swallow.
she gets to speak. Yeah,
I
very
wonder if I'll ever get to.
poetically.
I wonder if I'll ever get to see the armorer's face. That'll be interesting.
Maybe.
Maybe. Anyway, she gets this, delivers the line really well, but really what she's doing, she's comparing the simple forge with this big ornate forge, and says, "Listen, they might be different, but they did the same thing, right? They believed in the same thing." Is really what she's saying. She's getting at, right? She tells Bo to remove her helmet, and she's very hesitant. It's like, I don't know, is this a trap? This feels like a trap, right?
Yeah.
And it's I liked how she plays it too, because she's like, "Are you sure?" And then she's like, "Do you respect me?" She's like, "Yeah, okay, I respect you." She's like, "Okay, then do what I say." And like, "Okay, fair enough. That's a power move. I get you." And so
Yeah.
Bo takes off her helmet, and then the armorer talks about how the Mandalorians have strayed from the way, but it's not enough for only a handful of them to recommit to this way of life, right? They need to recruit more to their cult, essentially. Um, and
Yeah.
and and then she kind of like gets right into it, because I get the impression that she's kind of been mulling this over for a while, and it's kind of fun to see her kind of admit that even she was a little wrong, right? She's like, "I even thought the mythosaur was a legend and not real, but you said you saw it, and if that's true, then it changes everything." And and
Right.
it heralds the age, the new age, or the next age of Mandalore. And it's now is the time that we need to pull together, not just us as a group, but all Mandalorians everywhere, so that we can retake the planet, which we find out in a little bit. And she says that you walked both worlds and you can unite them. What do you think she means by that?
Yeah, I just mean like because Bo has been with other worked with other Mandalorians who didn't follow this specific creed, but then now
Sure.
she's also part of this new group and new creed. But I feel like Bo also, you know, um, she has a whole storyline behind her about working with Death Watch and then leaving
Yeah.
Death Watch, and so she's seen how different groups of Mandalorians
Well, and her
work,
sister,
and she's
her
yeah,
yeah, you gotta yeah, her sister
exactly.
was in charge of a pacifist movement that was leading the
Yeah.
planet for a long. So she really has like
So
all the angles covered as far as Mandalorians are concerned.
yeah, exactly. So she's a really good person to kind of like have to kind of unite more Mandalorians, bring more into the cause, and kind of bring everybody back together as one big group now, instead of having these splintered off kind of random groups of them, right? So
Yeah, it's interesting because she was like all bitter about the dark saber at the beginning of the season, right? Do you still have it? Well, then wave it around and they'll do whatever you say, right? And now she's kind of given this position of authority by the armorer, who she called a cultist, basically, right? Um, and it's kind of like reinvigorating her. It's really interesting to watch how this character, who I think felt pretty broken, after the events, after not being able to retake the dark saber herself when Mando did it kind of by accident, um, and she was kind of self-loathing and depressed. and then she's kind of brought in by this new community. And sure, she was disparaging to them before, but they welcomed her, so she gave them a chance, and now she's being given this new sense of purpose by the armorer. And it's interesting because you could read it as she's being manipulated by the armorer a little bit, because Bo wants to believe in something, and she wants people to believe in her, and this person is doing that, so she'll kind of go along with whatever at this point, I feel like. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a very compelling. I don't know how much they'll explore that concept, or if if the Darksaber kind of subplot will come back up, because we haven't seen it much, not since the second episode of the season. So it's interesting. So Bo and the armor reemerge from the former covert, with Bo still not wearing her helmet. Everyone's looking at her like, "Oh my god, can you believe this? What's going on?" And the the armor. There's a lot of murmuring in this episode, like from the crowd. It's like there's like 4 or 5 times that happens. The armor announces that Bo is off to bring more Mandalorians to their cause. Paz is a little weirded out though. He's like, "But she shows her face. That's not fair." Right? And I think, I think it's a totally fair argument. It's like, wait a minute. Why is, and they raised that in that IMDb review we read. It's like, why is she allowed to take her helmet off, but no one else is? Just because she came from another quote unquote tribe was what she calls them in a moment. But how do you square that circle? How do you make that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't bug me. It's just kind of like she's gonna have to be able to take her helmet off to talk to other Mandalorians who don't wear their helmets. So it's just kind of, yeah, I wouldn't get too caught up on that. It's just,
yeah,
I
but if
think the armor realizes that that's what she's going to need to be able to do to unite more Mandalorians together.
So if she brings more Mandalorians to their cause, are they going to get to the planet and be like, wait a minute, I have to wear my helmet now all the time? Or are they going to let those Mandalorians also not wear their helmets?
I think in general, this is going to be about being a more inclusive group of accepting, I don't know, maybe hopefully the armor is thinking of accepting more Mandalorians that aren't necessarily set in the same phase.
If that's the case, I feel like when those new Mandalorians arrive, there's probably going to be like a little bit of like infighting between the two groups. And I would like the outcome of that to be, you know what? As long as we're committed to the same goals and we're committed to the philosophy, I don't think we need to all wear our helmets, and we can remove that stupid rule. And that would be nice. Although it would also probably mean that Pedro Pascal would have to be on set more often, and he's like never on set. So I don't know how that changes or plays into this, but anyway. So let's wrap this episode up. It's time to retake Mandalore, is what they say. We get some really triumphant music as we get a shot of Bo's face. That's really exciting. As I said before, it gives this new sense of purpose to the season. And I guess the question is, do you think they will retake Mandalore this season, or make an attempt at it?
I mean, to me, I'm like, how much is there really to retake, because it's like destroyed? But yeah, maybe they can do some. Maybe we'll see them at the end trying to rebuild it in the last little bits of this season. But yeah, I don't know. Just to me, I'm like, when it comes to Mandalore, it's like, well, what is there to retake? Because there's no one there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And maybe they mean that Mandalore is like a concept and not the planet itself.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Then we cut to, which I thought this was the end of the episode, but we get this kind of long black scene, so it's like it makes you feel like this is like almost like a post-credit scene. It's like it's space, or in space, and Carson Teva is investigating a wrecked Lambda shuttle. He calls into Lieutenant Reed, who looks, who is kind of like working on this case alongside him, as he's investigating the vessel. I did like the look of this ship, kind of in the darkness with the light on it. It looks very spooky. It's a kind of cool idea. He calls to Lieutenant Reed to get kind of some more information, and ask if there's any records of missing ships in the area. He says there is, but the details are classified. So, that's interesting. What does that mean? Who's keeping this a secret? We'll have to wait and see to find that out. R7 sends a probe into the ship. Didn't know that the little thing could that R2 always sticks out of his head could also detach from his head. But maybe it's like an upgrade. This is many years after the events of the R2 that we know was doing that. So, c'est possible. Just a cool idea that's a probe and you can use it like that. Although the fact that he has to like watch the footage on this tiny little monitor in his cockpit is pretty funny. So this probe enters the ship, retrieves the transponder signal, which is sent to Lieutenant Reed, who cross-references it with the departure times, the transport departure times, and we find out that it matches the ship that was transporting Gideon, which proves finally once and for all that he did not make it to questioning, did not get executed or whatever, or put in prison for the rest of his life. He escaped. So it's very likely that we'll see Gideon again this season.
Yeah, setting that up, so that's good.
Yes. And Gideon's a great villain, so that's nice to see.
Yes.
And then we find out there's no survivors and there's no body of Gideon. So again, really driving home, he did escape. They're saying, well, who did this? Who perpetrated this crime? And they spot what appears to be a shard of Beskar embedded in the wall, which I'm not sure how that even works. Like, where did the shard come from? Why is it embedded in the wall, etc. And then Reed is like, are you saying the Mandalorians took Gideon? Which is like, again, it's like, that feels like a bit of a leap, just because he was literally the one who stole all the Beskar. So it wouldn't be necessarily surprising that, I mean, he was he was a prisoner at the time, so he wouldn't have had any on him necessarily. But I guess the implication here is that here's what I think, okay? And I'll make this quick, which is, I think the Mandalorians did rescue him because he was at one time considered the leader of Mandalore because he held the dark saber, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he has some sort of subgroup of Mandalorians that are loyal to him somewhere, right? And that's who rescued him. That's my own, or they're being framed. Those are the two options. What's your theory?
Like,
there?
we know that Bo's group that she had before were just took off to be mercenaries.
Sure.
So
yeah.
They easily could have been hired or whatever, or they're, it could be a number of things. It could be that same group of mercenaries that she was with that either got hired to do this, or they're still pissed at Gideon for having the dark saber. I don't know. It could be a bunch of, but you're right. Maybe he had some that were following him too. But because he didn't really walk like he wasn't really a Mandalorian. But I mean, we've seen other people lead Mandalorian.
Yeah, well, neither was
like
Maul.
So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. I mean, it's interesting, but yeah, I think you're right that it's either not them at all, or it was very purposeful. Like they took him for a reason. So
yeah, Commander Stinger saying that
it being Mandos. But
yeah, I think that's fair. Commander Stinger saying that Bo is not allowed to wear a helmet because she was on Stargate, but I think he means that she was on Battlestar Galactica, unless she was also in Stargate, which I'm not familiar with. So, anywho, that's the episode. We leave on this big mystery. All the threads are pulling together. 3 episodes left. Gideon is probably going to reappear. The Mandalorians are more focused. We have a clear understanding of the operations of the New Republic. Zeb is back is in the picture somehow. Lots of exciting stuff. I think it's a pretty good episode. I was pretty pleased. This is a good week for Star Wars. So, any final thoughts, Rachel?
No, overall good action, and I'm excited for next week. So.
Yep, me too. Next week, Chapter 22, Season 3, Episode 6. But until then, go watch The Bad Batch if you haven't done so already. That's my only ask of you. That, and also help support the show at patreon.com/TowerBabblecast, and check out the website towerofbabel.ca. We will see you next week, where we're only reviewing 1 episode, which will be a nice change after the last 5 weeks. And until then, may the Force be with you. Take care.
All right, I gotta hop off here.
Yep.